Alright, this is Big Boss from Foxhound Woodsball, coming to you from Fort Lauderdale and from my blog page over at outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. I'm also repping the guys from Acid Tactical, so you can check them out over at acidtactical.com. Anyway, we're going to be discussing the Evolution of Battledress. Now, why do we need to look at how combat uniforms evolved as far as being paintball players? We just buy anything off the rack from an Army Navy store. We buy the ready-made stuff from paintball shops. We buy crap from airsoft shops where we need to as tactical players. The thing is, one, I'm a fan of military history. Two, it's an appreciation of where we come from, not just as far as the uniform style, the camouflage patterns, but for those of us that have a understanding of history, it gives us an appreciation that we're wearing something that maybe our fathers or grandfathers or even our own mothers probably wore if they served. For me, this is a little bit of everything. I've got a lot of family that were war vets. I'm not a vet myself. Oh, this uniform entirety I got off eBay. But as a tactical paintball player, it's like, hey, I gotta keep with the times too. So I went down the multicam rabbit hole, got the Army stuff, but other than that, this is pretty damn good. We're going to be discussing its history. And I'm going to also find some content on the breakdown of the uniforms used by the Navy and the Marine Corps, though I don't have access to those either. So with that being said, I'll figure something out. I'll pop in content from other guys. I will give credit where credit is due naturally. But before we get this thing going, a word from our friends and sponsors over at Acid Tactical. We'll be back right after this.
So we're going to start out by talking about the basic combat uniforms that you saw throughout the Vietnam War of standard leg infantry. Early in the war, you would see OG 107s like this. Satines, they would call them. This is obviously a Marine configuration. We're going to come back and revisit this with Brent. But just the standard, I don't even know if it was classified as a combat uniform. This was almost like a worker's uniform, but you can see very simple top pocket. It was designed to be tucked in. Pants have a big front pocket, but no side pocket, straight leg pants. These were kind of known as being hot. They didn't dry very well. They didn't breathe very well, and they didn't typically last very long. So we're going to go down the line when we started getting into real combat uniforms. This is kind of known, I guess, by collectors as your Type 1. This was a cotton material, a poplin material. This was really your standard where your combat fatigues, even those of you that wore BDUs back in the 80s, those derived directly from these. You'd have a button fly, exposed buttons, but if you'll notice, these pockets are really similar to what's on the BDUs. The difference is none of these really had a reinforced crotch or seat, and they didn't have reinforced knees. And throughout the war, this was the biggest complaint, I think, from soldiers all around, was that they would blow out the crotch, they would blow out the knees of all of their uniforms, and they could go through them pretty quick. Just looking at footage of guys in combat, that also happened. Usually the crotch is blown out, or the knees are blown out, or the legs are ripped. That's just how it was. But this was the first type uniform. Same thing on the shirt. You have the kind of popular, famous slant pockets, which are really great. Exposed buttons. And what they found was that these buttons would kind of get hung on things and tend to pull off. You even had your old style epaulets up top. And you had some on the sides for taking up the slack of the shirt. There's more details to this, but we're not going to get real deep into it because it's a long video. But you can look up, research the Type 1 jungle fatigues, and you can get more information on those. Once these were complete, they came out with the Type 2. The Type 2 was the same material, but they covered all the buttons. This is a pair of Type 2 trousers, for example. So it's cotton, a poplin material, but they covered up the buttons so the buttons are no longer exposed. We still don't have a reinforced seat or knees. That won't come until after the Vietnam War. But that was the second type. The third type, which is what you all are probably most familiar with, was the ripstop. This ripstop came out. I think the term ripstop's kind of a misnomer. These tear. They get really thin and they tear really easily. But if you have a really small hole, it's designed to not tear out beyond the weave. But a rip will just rip through there. But if you'll look, you'll see you've still got your covered buttons. They're no longer exposed. We just got a new material that was thinner, would breathe, they thought a little better, and would dry a little faster. It just gets paper thin though. This is an original pair. Well, these are both originals, but this pair of pants I've had since I was a kid. And you can see there's a lot of repairs on these. Of course, the knees have been blown out, repaired a few times. I ain't blown out the crotch yet, but probably not that gifted. But these are just, I'm telling you, these are just thin as can be. And I guarantee you I could pull on that really hard and I could tear it just like that. They're just, they just got thin and they just got torn and they had to be replaced on a regular basis. But this ripstop material would carry on throughout the BDUs throughout the 80s, and even today you can still get uniforms in ripstop material. You guys know that. So it's something that's here to stay. Later on, late in the war, you started seeing camouflage patterns come out. We're not talking about necessarily with special teams. We'll get into that later, but you would even see some standard infantry units start getting issued these this Erdl pattern. It started out with, I'm just using the term special teams for any special forces unit, whether it was advisors or LERPs or SEALs or Rangers, special forces. There's more that I'm not even naming, but we're not really talking about those units, but just your standard leg infantry. Late on in the war, 71, 72, you'll have guys start to get these. Sometimes they'll start to show up. So this was just a camouflage pattern that was developed in the 40s that ended up being printed onto a ripstop material. Really, the first ones were on a poplin, if you can find those. And they're the exact same cut. There's nothing different about these. These are a standard Type 3 cut, just like the Type 3 green fatigues. A couple of things that I'll point out on insignia, though, because these are kind of cool. If you look at these, like this one's a machine sewn insignia. When it came to name tapes and it came to unit patches, those changed throughout the years. You guys know early on you would have like the U.S. Army in gold and black and a name tape in white. That got changed out pretty quick to go to subdued. The locations of the patches changed. Initially they were parallel with the ground, and later on they became angled with the pockets. There was a shortage of these name tapes. When they made this change in the middle of the war, they didn't send name tapes over for everybody. So what happened was, for a lot of guys to remain compliant, is they went over to the local tailor in the local village and said, hey, I need some name tapes. And what they would do is they would hand sew those tapes. And this is a set of hand sewn tapes. You can see that it's just a regular poplin material. They hand sewed my name on there. The unit insignia. Also hand sewn, rough around the edges. Look at pictures, these were pretty common. So as they started phasing out the colored patches, going to subdued, people started making their own. And it wasn't until later in the war that the patches as we know them today, the embroidered patches, really became popular and started catching up with supply. Okay, I'm going to call that good on the U.S. Army uniforms. We'll do headgear in a minute. Let's look at the Marine Corps uniforms.
All right, so Bruce gave us a pretty in-depth uniform guide, so I'm not going to go over the same material. I'm just going to note that obviously Devil Dogs, when they first got in country, they were wearing these OG 107 utilities. As you can see, this Devil Dog shirt's tucked in. You may or may not see a Marine Corps emblem on his left breast pocket. He's using a standard web belt, and you know, we'll talk about equipment belt later. Another thing I want to point out is his boots. And you know, Marines, when they first showed up, you know, they had black leather combat boots. They didn't have the jungle boots right away. So we'll talk about boots again here in a second. And yeah, so moving on back here, same thing. Marines had this essentially the exact same uniforms as the Army throughout the war. Started off with the OG 107s, moved on to the Type 1s, Type 2s, Type 3s, and then the biggest difference is going to be your ERDL uniforms, the camouflage utilities. I believe it was around in '68 at some point, regular Marine infantry started getting issued, you know, frontline infantry guys started getting issued the ERDL uniforms. Unlike the Army, who are primarily wearing the ODs throughout the entirety of the war. And generally that uniform is regulated to, you know, special purpose troops. In the Marine Corps, you know, standard grunts were wearing ERDL camouflage. One thing you want to note though is like the utility cover is going to be a solid OD green utility cover, and that will remain true all the way until, hell, I think the you know, either late 70s or maybe early 80s before you start seeing actual camouflage utility covers. But even with the ERDL uniform when it was issued, you'll see Marines with OD green utility covers.
Okay guys, so there were two different colors or shades of ERDL. You had a green dominant and a brown dominant, and they were just that. If you compare these two, you can see that the only difference really is that this one is tan, whereas this coloration is more of a lime green. And that makes this more of a brown dominant and this more of a green dominant. The idea was that these were designed to be used in the different areas of Vietnam that dictated this color shade. I don't know that it ever got issued like that. The logistics probably just got in the way. But one interesting point I wanted to point out is that I've got these brown dominant pants with a green dominant pocket. And that's something that's unique to 1969 dated pants. For whatever reason, I don't know if there was a shortage or what, but collectors will tell you most of the ones that they see that are a mix of brown and green, if you look, that waistband is green also, were made in 1969. Zipper on that. And so these pockets are also green dominant on the inside. So maybe there was a shortage of brown dominant in 1969, not sure. But every now and then you'll find a strange pair like this that I have, where you've got some green dominant panels on an overall brown dominant pair of pants.
Okay, I hope that little rundown was good. I know I don't normally use other people's content to help further my own, but as you guys know, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Check the links out for those guys in the description to this video, as you guys know, but let's move on. Now, after Vietnam, the U.S. military was still in a transitional phase after the conflict, as the 70s were pretty much a slump for the American military as a whole. But with that was the introduction of the BDU uniform, as well as the M81 woodland camouflage pattern, which in itself is a evolution off the Rapid Deployment Force ERDL pattern, which was further refinement of the brown dominant ERDL, which was used during Vietnam. Now, basic rundown, no BS. Instead of the slanted pockets, pockets were at a 90-degree straight up and down setup, which was more ergonomic. You got your pen pockets, the buttons, the jackets had reinforcement on the elbows, but also with the pants. Now, opening this up a little bit, let me get the pants out of this one. Okay, basic, no BS BDU pants. Now, you got your side adjustment tabs, which has been a carryover from the at least the Type 2 or Type 3 jungle fatigues of Vietnam. Double button closure for the back pockets. All buttons are covered. Finally, over the years you'll see variations of the same BDU pants. Some of them would have a flap on the inside, some of them wouldn't, depending upon whether you got a standard issue or a hot weather pattern. Some woodland BDU jackets even followed the same thing, where you'd have side adjustment buttons on here. This particular example doesn't, but that being said, this is where they kept the pocket pleats on the BDU pants. They reinforced the knees, which they didn't during Vietnam, which was probably a bad idea at the time, but it was fixed with this version. They reinforced the seat as well as the inseam section. Overall, this uniform was a staple for the entire United States military from the 1980s well into the early days of the global war on terror. Now let me pop in something else, see where we go on that, and let's see what we cook up.
What's up, guys? Today I have for you is an NWU Type 3 issued Aero 2 pants by the Navy. And basically here, let's open these things up. I'll show you exactly what these pants come, what they look like. They are 50/50 ripstop. They do come with a little tab, a little UPC tab. These are brand new. These are a large regular. They fit exactly like a regular proper true spec, any of the large regular. They do have 4 buttons. Has a the weird design there with the buttons. So they do have here the belt straps. They're pretty big belt loops. You can put a big rigger belt in there. It does have the USN logo on it. I don't know if you can see here on camera. It does come embedded into the fabric. That is the difference between the cries. And here on the waist, it has a stretchy material, which is pretty good. Because if you're not wearing a belt, it'll contour to your waist. The side pocket here is basically like your regular issue pocket, which is the Velcro and the 2 buttons. and the drain holes on the sides here, so it won't get full of water. It has this nice little cut here, nice little stitching design. Now to the leg part, has like the regular small pouch there you can put miscellaneous things. It also has the Velcro, has a flap. Also has here the boot ties in the bottom. If you need to use, I cut these things off usually, but they do come with it. So that's pretty much it for the side pocket. Let's get to the back. It's pretty much the standard design, same thing. Back pockets also feature the 2 buttons in the back. Same thing on the other side. It's just 2 buttons, there's no Velcro in the center. I said it's the same leg cut. Same thing as your regular standard pants. Alright, now getting to the field top and the field jacket. It's pretty much your standard jacket in the RO2 fabric. This does have the same thing, UPC little thing when you order it. If it's brand new, it'll come with it. Basically, this one comes with a U.S. Navy tab on it. Front pocket design is the same thing. 2 buttons in the Velcro, 2 buttons in the Velcro. This one has a CB logo already embedded in it. Some of them don't come with it, but this one happens to come with it. But it doesn't bother me because it blends right in. It has a little tab here for whatever it is, whatever the use is for that, I don't know. But it does have it. This one also comes with the buttons. Same thing, no zipper design on it. That's just a button. It also features the Mandarin collar. Same thing. With the Velcros on the sides here, and it has an additional Velcro tab to hold it back when you do fold the collar down. This is a large regular. It does fit like any large regular, any proper 2-spec, any top. Same thing, same cut. This one also features the USN logo in it, into the RO2 pattern, which you can barely see it, but it is there. For the side pocket, it does have for the flags. It has the Velcro. Same thing, the 2 buttons, Velcro design with the 2 buttons. So it does not have the 4x6 patch, I guess for squads or morale, whatever you want to use it for. It does not come with it. And it's a cuff as well, same thing. It does not come with Velcro either. And it does not feature the inserts for any kind of like elbow pads, anything like that. It's just your just regular standard cut. Nothing special to it. So like I said, for the collar, it's the same thing. It just has the button design. It has 2 buttons, so you can adjust it. It's not really a bother because most of us do roll up the sleeves anyway. And I forgot to mention here, it has a little flap here for the pocket that absorbs the Velcro. I guess so it won't get stuck for easy access. So I guess that's what that's for. So pretty much, like I said, this is a 50-50 ripstop. It is a jacket. It's not a 65-35 blend. It is issued by the Navy, I guess, to the CBs. It's an NW Type 3. So there you guys have it. Thanks for watching.
In February of 2003, the Navy decided to make the NW1. There was a woodland variant and a digital variant. The woodland variant was based off the classic M81 Woodland, and the digital version was based off the United States Marine Corps' MARPAD. The NW, or Navy working uniform, was designed to just be that, a working uniform. Before, you had the classic coveralls and dungarees, and if you were a corpsman, or SEAL, SWIC, CB, flight deck kind of guy, you wore the classic MA1 BDU. The digital and woodland patterns were made to reflect the Navy of the colors of the ocean, such as gray, black, and most notoriously, blue. This choice of color has been mocked for years, with a couple of overused jokes like, "What happens if you fall overboard? It turns orange when it comes in contact with salt water. You look like a blueberry." To dispel the most common rumors, no, it does not turn orange when exposed to salt water. Most people who are in a position to fall overboard, such as flight deck personnel, are wearing colored jerseys in colors such as orange, green, purple, and brown, and will have other visible ways to hopefully be recovered. And yes, you do actually look like a blueberry. The main reason why the pattern is on the uniform is to represent the Navy. It looks cool, and it helps conceal stains better than the old dungarees. A foreign example of a working uniform would be the Czech N92. NWA was a blue dominant version of the digital scheme and is a variant that won the trials and began fleet-wide issue. NWB was a gray dominant woodland version and did not win. NWC was the blue dominant woodland version and also did not win. NWD was a gray dominant digital version and did not win the trials. The early trial cut of uniforms, which were referred to as the Task Force uniform, or TFU, had two different cuts. One uniform was printed in NWA and B and had a rounded Mandarin collar like the MCCUU, and had two straight cut upper torso pockets like the BDU, and had two shoulder pockets, all closed with black buttons, and had a standard Department of the Navy style 8-point cap. All these trial uniforms and final product had the U.S. Navy A symbol throughout the pattern, and on the left breast pocket. The A symbol stands for Anchor, USS Constitution, and Eagle. The other cut was printed in NWC and D, and had a pointed BDU style collar and used a patrol cap. Overall, it was basically a BDU, but printed in a new pattern, so it had the same 4 torso pockets and layout. The testing of all these uniforms was like a baptism by fire. All of these variants were issued to a test group of around 1,700 sailors and were tested for 6 months from I think 2004 to 2005. These trial uniforms are denoted by a Chief of Naval Operations Task Force uniform gold thread embroidered patch on the right breast pocket. Around November of 2007, after the Navy trialed their new uniforms, they collected and reviewed what the test group had to say about each one and compared and contrasted the results to find the winner. At the end, the NWA uniform with a pointed BDU collar, 2 straight chest pockets, 2 shoulder pockets, and the 8-point cap won the trial. The NWA pattern was slightly tuned and the final uniform began to be issued in January of 2009. It just so happened to be that my mom was in delayed entry program in late 2008 and shipped out to RTC Great Lakes in May of 2009 and was a part of Division 250/251. Her division was one of the first RTC Great Lakes divisions to be issued the new uniform as your standard uniform. She told me that it was very interesting seeing the old uniforms still in use from sailors who recycled during training. She told me some were even still wearing dungarees. My mom was also on the cover of the Start Guide. She graduated from training in July of 2009 and notably recalls how everyone was shocked to hear that Michael Jackson passed away once they got wind of what had passed since they were in training. My mother was an aviation machinist mate in the Navy Reserves. She was still issued the old BDU uniform, and when she got to her command, she remembers thinking it was weird that there were so many uniforms. I love her stories from that transitional time. Later I will talk with her about her experiences with the uniform. Closing this history segment, in 2012, tests were done that showed the material of the NW1 was unsat and would drip and melt on the wearer if there was a severe fire. The NW would be banned from being used as a working uniform until an FR version was made. Around the same time, AOR, or Area of Responsibility, was starting to be developed and people were seeking to ditch the blue camo altogether. However, AOR is not the subject of this video. By October 1st, 2019, the NW Type 1 would be completely phased out. Lastly, man, we were so close to actually adopting an urban woodland kind of HQ pattern. Could you imagine if they issued that pattern in Navy SEALs or something like that? It would be like HQ Recon in real life. For now, let's review the uniform. Holy shit, we're here to actually look at the uniform. Alright, so we got them 2 front chest pockets. You got the A symbol. On the inside of this pocket on the left, you got a little pen pocket in there to store your pens and pencils for doing garrison shit. Got that A symbol, look how beautiful that is. The eagle, anchor, and USS Constitution. Got the patterning of that USN symbol there. Look at that nice twill. This will melt on your skin and will expose to fire. But that doesn't really matter, man. On the collar here, we got that pointed collar. We got Petty Officer 2nd Class. Very nice. Look at those shoulder pockets. Look at those tactical shoulder pockets. See how it's angled? It's very nice. Not sharp. Pretty good size. No pleats or anything. Close by black buttons. Very nice. No lower torso pockets. Elbow reinforcements. And on the cuff, we have the standard BDU style of blousing. Very nice. 3 settings. The buttons are all there. No pleats on the back whatsoever. But very nice, soft. Sometimes I heard stories that this was actually very heavy in tropical climates, that people who are stationed like Guam, Thailand, or anywhere in Southeast Asia did not like this uniform's material. But if you were garrison stateside, this is very nice, temperate, BDU kind of style material. On the inside here, this is what the contract says. This one's in large long, and there's all the size, NSN. And then we have lot number 060, but this was made in 2008. So this is actually a pretty early model of NW Type 1. I just realized that now, that this is actually almost like as early as you can get them. That's pretty cool, actually. Look at that. Very awesome. If you were just got these issue, what you would do is you'd write your division number right here, and then like your name and stuff on these tags, so that in laundry they'll be able to find your tags. This one large long, very nice. Here's what the back of the uniform looks like. As you can see, it's CAD pat inspired, but they say Marpat, but you have those CAD pat shapes in here, if I can find one again, the little twinkles, like stuff like that. It's found in CAD pat. Very nice pattern, super appealing. This kind of pattern was kind of copied throughout the 2010s and late 2000s as like a subdued urban digital. And this is like sometimes like a paintball camo. It's kind of a commercialization of it has happened, but there's that button torso closure. Very nice, just like a BDU. These pockets are straight cut, and my mom, when she was in the Navy, she said that she always thought the Marine Corps uniform looked stupid because these pockets on the Marine Corps uniform are slanted. She didn't like that, but as you can see, it's similar to the NW Type 1 blouse, but on the Marine Corps blouse, you have that rounded collar. You have that eagle of an anchor on the left torso pocket. You have a pin pocket that's on the outside, and these pockets are actually closed by Velcro. These pockets I'm okay with being closed by Velcro because they're like, unlike the ACU, these pockets, if you leave them open, it's just not going to fall out of them. The ACU, I don't understand that. I hate those pockets so much where they're Velcro, and if the Velcro wears out, stuff going to just fall out of them. With same exact pocket design on shoulders. This is a pre-2010 MCC UU, so it actually has a place to put elbow pad inserts, but same kind of reinforcement on the outside. Some guy's probably division number. Let's see here. I think that's a lot number, but you would put like your division number or recruit, whatever. Moving on to the pants. The pants are almost identical, but like I said, pre-2010 they had places to put inserts in the pants for the Marine Corps uniform, but these pants are basically identical. To start, we have a button fly. Oh shit. NW uniform, we have a zipper fly or brass, I think YKK zipper there, closed by a black button. While on the MCC UU, you have a button fly. The button fly is always going to be superior buttons over zippers. I love buttons. They're so simple, so nice, and very nice. Same size kind of belt loops. In the Navy, they would use like black roller belts and like a black or a blue undershirt, while in the Marine Corps, you had different levels of roller belts for different martial art programs and stuff. But overall, same kind of belt loop design. There's elastic on the waist on both of them. And same kind of belt loop design, 2 back pockets, same kind of seat reinforcement, very nice. Nothing special at the crotch, except that the Marine Corps one blows out sometimes. And same thing with the NW does blow out sometimes, but no like cool like martial arts style crotch reinforcement, so it doesn't blow out. On the pockets here, the same kind of design. They have elastic in here, and these are very nice. I love these cargo pockets. They're super awesome. But this is closed by 1 button, has elastic, very good size. And this is closed also by 1 button on the side. And it also is the same exact design with that elastic in the middle. Very nice. And there's elastic on the waist. There's a little like on the inside. Comparing them. Very nice. These pants were made in, let's see here. This is a guy named Lopez. That's pretty cool. These ones were made in 2014, or that's the lot manufacturing number. Very awesome. While these pants here, these were made in 2006 or 2006 by EA Industries. Hell yeah. But one difference between the Marine Corps uniform and the NW Type 1 uniform is that the NW Type 1 uniform is like in like size 36, 34, like specific sizes. See, this one's in 37 regular, while the USMC uniform is like in medium and large and small and stuff like that. It's a medium short. So this is general size, and this is like specific sizing, so it's tailored. Same kind of knee reinforcements that kind of run up to the thigh a little bit. Very nice on both of them. Very cool, very nice, very awesome. On the bottom, both of them don't have any blouse string. You know, it is what it is. The BDU did, but they removed that. So overall, these pants are pretty much the exact same, and that's why I didn't really mention them that much. But yeah, overall, this uniform is very nice. I like how it feels. It's very nice material. I like it. It's soft. And my mom says a similar thing about it. But like I've said before, it's just that in hotter environments, this uniform is a darker color. And also from reports of people who were stationed in Southeast Asia, this was not the most breathable uniform. You gotta think like 100% humidity, so it's gonna suck. But like 60 degrees, Norfolk, Virginia kind of day with the coastal breeze on you. Oh, this will feel pretty good actually. So yep, that's basically an overview of the uniform. Thank you.
The Marine Corps Combat Utility Uniform, also known as MCCUU, is the Marine Corps' attempt at differentiating itself between all the other branches. In the late 1990s, when everybody was running around M81 BDUs, not ripstop, you know, any summer variant, temperate variant, whatever, the Marine Corps decided that they wanted to look different. Before, they just added their Eagle Globe anchor on the pocket on their 8-point caps right on top the front. But they decided to make their own pattern. Taking inspiration from Canada's CAD-PAT, they made what they call MARPAT, or Marine Pattern. And it was patented, I think, in July of 2001, and then the uniform, the MCCUU, was patented in November of 2001. And these were, and like a lot of new uniforms, these didn't really show up in like prominence until around 2004 in the Battle of Najaf, where you see a lot of Marines running around in Marpat and Fallujah and stuff like that. But before that, and due to supply issues, you would see a lot of Marines just running in the 3-color DCU, and that was pretty common throughout GWAT, or at least early GWAT. So today I'm just going to give you some light history and just a general overview of the uniform and my experience with it. So the MCCUU takes some BDU aspects but makes it a bit more modern. So you have 2 front chest pockets closed by Velcro, then you have 2 shoulder pockets closed by buttons here. Not like the US Army's ACU with Velcro and everything. But this was definitely a more step in the modernish direction when it comes to body armor. Because in the BDU, once you put like an IBA on an interceptor vest or any kind of armor or passkit vest, you won't be able to use any of these pockets. So using what they called, the raid mod back in the day, they modernized a little bit by putting shoulder pockets, putting slanted pockets here, used with Velcro so it doesn't like rub into you. So it just makes it easier to get into armor. It's apparently a bit of a gimmick, but that's besides the point. The Marine Corps Combat Utility Uniform came in several different variations, but the early prototypes, you had a tiger stripe camouflage, you had like I think a Rhodesian brushstroke one. There was also like a Marpat Urban, but you mainly just had Marpat Woodland and Marpat Desert as your 2 camouflage pattern options. There are several variations and testing trials I went through, but this is just what the end was. I don't have any Woodland Marpats. We're just using this Desert Marpat as our base here. So the Marine Corps Combat Utility Uniform had a couple different accessories. You didn't have any like gear that was in any Desert Marpat or Woodland Marpat. It was mainly just Coyote, because Coyote just was like a color that matched with both of them, and the Marine Corps decided to do that. But you had like a boonie hat, and you had I don't think they had boots, but yeah, mainly just a boonie hat, helmet covers, and I think that's about it. I don't think they had gloves in it or anything. But you also had the Frog variant, which came later after IEDs and improvised explosive devices became a bit more prominent in GWAT. They decided to make flame-resistant clothing, because this isn't exactly flame-resistant. It's a 50 nylon cotton mix, as you can see here. That's what it says. This one was made in 2006. 2006 by EA Industries, or that's the fiscal year or whatever. And this actually is, since it's before 2010, it actually has places to put in elbow inserts, which you can find on the inside of the sleeve. On the inside of a sleeve, before 2010, you have these places to put elbow pads, and the same thing on the pants to put your knee pads. I have an entire video where I talk about it. Here are the knee pads. This is what it looks like. Top brand SN numbers and all that. That's what it looks like. And these are just foam pads. They're nothing too special. That's what they look like. Pretty simple. Going back to the flame resistant concept, a lot of Marines towards like the later 2000s, around 2010, you would see them running around in just like Coyote flight suits, because those were actually flame resistant before they had the Frog variants. And even in the present day in 2024, some Marines are still facing supply chain issues where they're not able to get woodland frogs, desert frogs, or really anything that's in frog. But frog is basically their flame resistant retardant gear. But back to the general overview of the uniform. Of course, you have any real deal USMC, MCCUU uniform, you have an Eagle Globe and anchor basically anywhere. So this says medium long, made especially for the United States Marine Corps, Department of the Navy, United States Marine Corps, which Marine Corps is Department of the Navy, made by EA Industries Incorporated. I don't know if that changes for each manufacturer, but it might. On the left chest pocket here, we have an Eagle Globe and anchor, or an EGA, similar to the U.S. Navy's base, which is the anchor U.S. Constitution, and the Eagle, which the U.S. Navy came out with their NW Type 1 in 2000. They developed it in 2004, but it wasn't until 2007 where you saw some use of it. And then it wasn't until 2008 when it fully rolled out to the fleet. But before that, around 2004, they made the Navy work uniform cut, and they had like a woodland variant, and they had a bunch of stuff. And there's a ton of, I'll get to the video about that. Right now we're just talking about Marine Corps Marpat. So again, just a general overview of the uniform. Like I said, Eagle Globe anchor is basically anywhere. So you have one here on the left chest pocket with a pen pocket here, and you have one here on the tag. And then also throughout the pattern, if I can find one here, throughout the pattern, you'll have an Eagle Globe and anchor, USMC. Throughout the pattern, the Navy did the same thing with their ACE, USN for United States Navy. And this uniform is very, very simple. It's not meant to be tucked in. You can roll up the sleeves. You have elbow reinforcements. Like I said, there's a place where you can put an elbow pad in there with it. 50/50 Nyko twill, rounded edges on the shoulder pockets, closed by 2 buttons. You have a button up front, very nice. You have a rounded collar, which can be found now on the OCP uniforms, very nice, not Mandarin. On the sleeves here, we have an inside out basically button blouse system compared to the BDU. So there's a button and there's different holes across the cuff, and you can use that button and you can put it inside those holes. I personally am not the biggest fan of that feature because I feel like on the tighter settings it just doesn't hold as well and it can be unbloused easier, but overall I think it's definitely a good step. I'm still definitely a big fan of the BDU. There's no pleats on the back, nothing like that. No more reinforcements. Overall, the USMCC UU top is overall pretty good. It's not too heavy, not too light, and definitely is good camouflage. Very nice. Definitely one of the best desert patterns we have. That's just a basic general overview of the MCC UU top. I kind of wish I could wear it more around, but I don't really like wearing marine stuff out above it, to be honest, man. I don't know why. All right, now we got the pants, and these came in brand new condition, but all the wear just for me being stupid with them. But let's give a general overview of the pants. So on the pants here, we have a good 1.5 inch belt loops, almost 2 inches. Button up fly, elastic on the side, removing those pesky metal tabs you would have on the BDU pants. These get really tight. The Marine Corps uniform does, anyways. For me, I find it a bit more tighter, especially around crotch space and just like waist space. It's definitely a much more tighter fit, and you also have like pleats on the side here for uniformity. On the knees here, we have big extended knee reinforcement compared to the BDU, which is just like a straight line, just runs up a little bit up to your thigh. And behind here, I have you have the USMC Globe and Anchor, but I have worn down these knees a little bit. It hasn't really punctured through the main fabric when it comes to wear, but I've had like punched some holes through the lower ends using the knee pads, because like when I'm wearing knee pads I kind of forget that like these are, you know, not reinforced, they're not like a knee pad material, they're still cloth, so I punched some holes in there. Just like the field shirt, you have places to put the knee pads and they slide around a lot, not recommended. But on the other pant leg, anywhere it's not where it's reinforced, on the reinforcements they held up, but anything below the pant leg I've actually been able to bust holes straight through it. As you can see, absolutely tear that one. That was from playing airsoft, like a rocky kind of area. But overall, these pants are very comfortable. They are a little bit, they're a little bit constricting in my personal opinion. And also, I kind of blew out the crotch a little bit here. So this could be just like an improperly sized problem, because I usually wear medium regulars or medium short. But, you know, I don't really think length should do this. So I also blew out the crotch a little bit. We have the original stitching here, and then this is my stitching here. There's no reinforcement or no like, what do you call it, like an MMA kind of style crotch reinforcements, standard BDU where it can rip. All these interlocking stitches. On the back, you have a good decent seat reinforcement. You put your name tape right here. And overall, the back, nothing really to it. Standard kind of BDU, nothing really changed. And then on the sides here, we have some cargo pockets that are just like the BDU, but the only difference is that they added elastic on the sides, and that keeps you know, even all these years later, what is that, 18 years later, after 2006, the elastic's still holding up. And this is closed by one button on the side, and then it's stitched on the other side. There's no button there. These are good, decent sized cargo pockets, similar to the BDU, if not the exact same. And overall, these cargo pockets are definitely a good step in the right direction. The U.S. Navy basically copied not only the pattern, but almost entirely the same cut. The only difference on the U.S. Navy uniform is that this will melt on your skin compared to the USMC uniform, which won't really melt. But the 50/50 Nyko twill that the U.S. Navy used was actually, it's a bit softer than the Marine Corps uniform, and also it does melt and drip on your skin. But the point is that they copied basically everything except don't have any elbow pad inserts here, and also you have a normal BDU kind of style blouse here on the wrists, and also on the pockets on the chest they're not slanted, nor does it have a pen pocket on the outside. It actually has a pen pocket on the inside of the left chest pocket. But on the sides, you can see same exact kind of shoulder pocket design. And on the pants, same kind of belt loops, same elastic on the waist, same BDU style back. And oh yeah, they both have 2 front pockets. They both have 2, you know, side pockets. But exact same design when it comes to this cargo pocket design that's closed by 1 button and with the elastic, and the same exact reinforcement on the knees where it kind of comes up to the thigh. And also, not exactly the same problem, but the U.S. Navy uniform also does blow out the crotch a little bit, at least for me. But overall, these are pretty good. But the only thing is that the Marine Corps uniform comes in like medium, large, small, while the Navy uniform comes in like, 37 regular or something like that. While Marine Corps uniform comes in like medium, regular, medium, short, stuff like that. So similar to the Air Force, the U.S. Navy copied that kind of sizing. I definitely prefer the medium short, where it's just like, you have a little bit more variance and you don't have to buy a one specific heavily tailored garment. And then on the bottom here, we have no boot ballast strings at all. So they just did away with those because most Marines, use the boot bungees or tuck in your boots in the field or whatever. Same thing on the U.S. Navy uniform. So overall, this uniform is definitely a good modernization of the BDU, and I feel like I've just been rambling for fucking, how many minutes? 13 minutes? Holy shit.
Okay, next one we're talking about is going to be your desert BDUs, your DBDUs, your desert uniforms. Now, the three color was pretty much fully standardized by the time we entered the late 90s, but the 6-color one was a series of evolutions depending upon when the uniform was made. Now, for all you guys that don't know, and I know I've mentioned this in my Desert Storm video as well as other media that I've been talking about, the 6-color was designed in the 1960s. This was back when the United States feared they had to intercede on Israel's behalf during, I believe, the Yom Kippur War in '67. But here's the thing. When it comes down to the desert BDUs, they've been tinkered with throughout the 70s and 80s through the Bright Star missions, Desert Storm, even into Somalia. And as you can see, the hat I've got here is accurate for the period. We've got no brim around here. But other than that, this is pretty much essentially the same BDU style with one caveat. As I open up the jacket here, let me get the pants out of the way for a moment. Now, as you can see with this particular uniform, you've got this nice little like back piece here, kind of like a bib almost. Let me see, on this one this tag is pretty faded, but this is made by Selma Apparel in Selma, Alabama. Yeah, I do not see a date on which this particular jacket was made. Usually there's a signature for that somewhere on the uniform, as far as like a NATO stock, stuff like that. But this particular like bib thing is an indication that this was made somewhere in between the mid 80s and early 90s. So chances are good this uniform jacket did see action in the 91 Gulf War and maybe was further used in Somalia. Judging by some of the fading marks here where patches were, this was a United States Army issue. Back in the 80s and 90s, the Marines didn't have the name tapes or service tapes on these uniforms yet. So this one, definitely a nice uniform, definitely still within your BDU family, but let's have a little more fun on some shit. Okay, we're doing a bit of a 2-for-1 deal on this one. You got your typical 3-color Desert Battledress uniform. This replaced the 6-color by the time 1994 rolled around. After operations in Somalia, this was in use very little in the tail end of Desert Storm, but it was still proven effective and replaced the 6-color as the standard desert uniform for the United States military going into Iraq in 2003 and subsequent other combat deployments. These things were the BDU cut itself was being phased out, and we were also experimenting with other camouflage patterns, which led to what would be called the close combat uniform. Now, let me pull up a little video presentation on this one.
During the war in Iraq, the idea of the Striker Brigade came about. This was to serve as a middle ground between heavy mechanized infantry forces and armored units, designed to be flexible and able to deploy within a 96-hour time frame. The idea was to have a combat uniform that would be more efficient in the cramped confines of such vehicles. With that came about several patterns, one of them being in M81 woodland camouflage, as it was the standard issue across the board for the Army. The other was the more prevalent three-color desert camouflage pattern, as combat operations were going on in both Iraq and Afghanistan, as this was the more needed pattern. Other pattern experimentation involved the Cry Associates Scorpion W2, which became the Cry Precision Multicam, and later the Army's OCP pattern, as well as a more experimental pattern called Urban Trek that was being toyed around with before ACUs. Other than that, they experimented with pockets, snaps, and everything that you can think of for these uniforms.
Okay. Hopefully that was a bit of an education. I think Uniform History did a better job on it than I did. I'll link them in the description to this video as well. But long story short, the close combat uniform was essentially the stopgap between your BDU and your ACUs. Now, I could drop this, and we're going to be using this uniform as a facsimile for what the close combat uniform was. This is made by Modern Combat Sports. This is their Fusion BDUs. I like the cut of the uniform, and I wanted to get this for this particular video I'm doing, so I decided, fuck it, I'm buying the whole set, even though I don't have any real deserts to play in down here. But as you can see real quick, we see a difference between how the tan in here is more pinkish and this one's more of a sandy color. So you can see how this one was pretty much made overseas. This one was American components assembled overseas. But I digress. I still like the uniform cut. I still like the setup. Definitely something for those guys to think about for desert environments, desert games. Now, as you can see, this uniform pretty much is everything that the combat uniform or close combat uniform was during its lifetime, being something used for the striker brigades back then and being used secondhand means one way or another back then. What makes this thing different from what became the Army combat uniform was this one still retains a button opening, which is still very prevalent on uniforms at that time, being a transitional period. They were screwing around with taking pockets off, putting different pockets on, snaps, buttons, Velcro. That's why we get the pocket layout the way we do. And just so we're clear, no, I'm not a vet. No, I'm not part of the United States Army or any other military service. I just got the name tape and the service tape on here as a cosplay deal. That way it makes the uniform look more authentic for those times if I decide to say, fuck it, I'll trade in my paintball gun for an airsoft gun type thing. But that being said, definitely wanted to keep this for more historical presentation purposes, but I digress. Now, let's get into some abortions. And by abortions, I definitely mean ACUs and ABUs. So let me whip those out. Okay, now I got what I call the abortion patterns, because these patterns, as far as camouflage go, were abysmal failures. I'm talking the Army combat uniform, which the pattern would be the Universal Camouflage Pattern, or UCP, and we've got the ABUs, or Airman Battle Uniform, but many would call it the Airman Barracks Uniform. Again, Uniform History did some cool videos on both these uniforms. I'll definitely link their entire catalog into the description of my video, but long story short, this is pretty much what the United States Army was looking for. The boonie hat was pretty much the same. It never changed since the 60s, so we'll be moving that over to the side. Now, you got the place for your Velcro name tape, service tape, rank insignias. You got the pen pocket, the Velcro pocket to put pads in, slanted pockets that were done at a 45-degree angle. Some variants of the close combat uniform just had side openings that were 90 degrees up and down, but this was slanted, kind of like a throwback to the Vietnam period. But this is where things get interesting. Velcro opening, but you also had a zipper closure, as well as your Mandarin style collar. This was used to prevent chafing, especially when guys were wearing body armor like the Interceptor outer tactical vest or other flak vests and body armors that were coming online as this uniform entered service with the troops. Now, you got the pockets on the sleeves. Definitely open it. You got your pull tab here, though that's covered up to accommodate a flag. Or you could put your skill tabs. Now, the whole pocket on sleeve thing, we saw it with the close combat uniforms. We see that on almost any modern military uniform, but they also have their origins way back when. And this would be particularly during World War II, but let me give you a little video presentation on that one real quick.
The idea of putting pockets on the sleeves of uniforms dates back to World War II. This was particularly done with paratroopers, as their special missions during the D-Day invasion necessitated carrying large amounts of weapons and ammunition for their missions. Later on, the idea was carried on into the Vietnam War, particularly with special forces units like MACV-SOG, Navy SEALs, and others, but more notably MACV-SOG. However, the idea would become the raid mod, used during Desert Storm as well as other conflicts by special operations units. The concept has been very much made a pop culture thing, or a sign of being an elite soldier, because it's a modified field uniform, which, as we know, is a thing with special forces units, particularly being able to have a sterile uniform or mix it up just in case operational security requires.
Okay, now that that shit's out of the way, this was pretty much the biggest change to the field uniform. They completely redid the jacket because of the feedback from the close combat uniform. The BDU pants, these are going to be exactly the same as your RAP4 Fusion BDUs. They never really altered it. You still got the little ties on the pant legs for when you're wearing combat boots. You got the calf pocket on each leg where guys would stuff in tourniquets, it's stuff in bandages, maybe a piece of an MRE. Me, I used to be able to stuff a pack of cigarettes in here. Marlboro Red 100s, back when I was a serious smoker. As you also see, cargo pockets, same Velcro opening, though you can also dump a lot of kit in here if you have to. You got the elastic bungee on here to close it. What they didn't change, thankfully, was the button pocket closures on the back and on the front. It is easier to repair buttons in the field than it is to replace Velcro or a zipper. Plus, they also replaced the pull tabs on the side with the internal drawstring. It's good. It's got its good points. It's got its bad points. I will say that. Now, in this case, this entire uniform, the pants and the jacket are made by Proper. And Proper is a United States government contractor. They make battle dress for both commercial use as well as military. So any of their stuff coming off the assembly line is used for both. Both would have the permethrin impregnation. They'd both be near infrared compliant. Now let's drop the ACUs and let's go to the Airman Barracks uniform, because what the Air Force did, they kind of followed suit with the Army, and that means no testing whatsoever for camouflage effectiveness. Chief of Staff for the United States Air Force at the time felt that not that many airmen would be in combat zones, so this was pretty much a fashion statement. Tiger Stripe Productions, the guys that made the pattern, they even called out the Air Force publicly on it. So you got that. Uniform wise, yes, the Air Force did not do testing the same way the Army did, and it was a big debacle. Congress was pissed about it. Airmen deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq wearing this stuff, they were baking in the uniforms because the uniform cup, map pockets. Let me see if I could open this one up. It's been a while since I even looked in this particular set, but the ABUs were pretty much still recycled and updated BDU format. You got your two end pockets here. The cuffs are button closure, though I got the sleeves rolled up on this one because I'm a South Florida guy, so having this in the field, you definitely want to roll the sleeves up. Definitely kept the BDU style with the button closures on the pockets. This one does not have the internal map pocket, but this is definitely a U.S. Air Force issue. Now, before I get into the pants, the thing was when airmen were deployed or you had ground-based elements of the Air Force that were in close proximity to the front lines, they were able to get their hands on web gear and load-bearing equipment, body armor, and molly gear right from the U.S. Army. So that worked out pretty good because the color patterns are kind of similar. Let me pull out my Air Force, my H harness here. Funny thing, this is actually even though this is an ACU, this is actually a cut of web gear that was standard issue to the Air Force. So you'd be able to find this in ABU and ACU. I just grabbed it in ACU because of my gear preferences, but as you can see, holding it up to this thing, you see why the ACU and ABU would work well together. Even if there's a pattern contrast, color palettes are close enough to be negligible. Now, Already went through the jacket. The pants is where things get interesting. Now, unlike the Army, this is where the Air Force is actually smart. They kept the button closures on the cargo pockets on the back, and even the leg pockets, they've got a button closure on here. So that shows where the Air Force is actually intelligent, though. If they went with the Vietnam Tiger Stripe and a Desert Tiger Stripe for their ABUs, that would have been fucking sick. But I digress. Now, another thing about the ABU pants is they actually went a different route. They actually went with elastic to stretch on a person, and I see the idea about it, but it would have been better if they went with like the internal drawstring, or they went with the adjustment pull tabs of the ACU or older generation BDU. Now, as far as the Navy and Marine Corps uniforms go, I do not have those, but I will say the Marines kicked off this whole thing with wanting to be different and unique, and then the Army followed suit, then the Air Force, and then the Navy. But with that being said, let's kind of get into more modern uniforms. Alright, now we got kind of a 2-for-1 deal because I'm missing the rest of the other set, but with where we're at now, I got 2 different examples of multicam. However, both of them are U.S. Army. One was pretty much the pattern that got superseded by the abortion pattern of UCP. This one is OCP, Operational Camouflage Pattern, and this one is the Operation Iraqi Freedom Army Combat Uniform. This one is the licensed Cry Precision Multicam as far as I know. And the cut of this is the exact that is the original Army ACU jacket, but printed in the multicam pattern. This was the stopgap deal that the U.S. Army made with Cry Precision, and the U.S. Air Force also used it as well. It gained a big following, especially among Special Forces units like the Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces, as well as Air Force Pararescue, and many of your Tier 1 elements too. So, with that being said, that's why this pattern gained more of a following, and with that being said, it's got the same things as the Army ACU pattern, though this one, unlike the UCP jacket that you saw previously, this one actually has the patches for the name and service tape, as well as the rank insignia stitched onto the uniform. Even though it's easier to take the stuff off to when you're laundering it, it also had its ups and downs. And quite frankly, how often do guys change your ranks up, and how often do guys transfer from one service branch to another? So with that being said, this uniform was the final iteration of the Army Combat uniform as we knew it at that particular time. So you got the slanted pockets, you got all the jazz of the Army Combat uniform, but here's where things get interesting. Opening up the flap pocket here, you got the pull tab. This actually has the IR glint ape stitched in here. Now, for all you guys that have been downrange, you know it's a pain in the ass to stitch on that little IR square, put it on your helmet, and when you get home and you're doing a unit inspection, the sergeant major or your first sergeant's looking at you like, why the hell do you have something like that on your uniform? And it became a big deal about putting it on, taking it off, and you have it on both sides of the uniform. here and here underneath the pull tab, so that way, even though you could pull it up, you can also just tuck it away under the flap if you're not needing it. This was definitely a nice little feature they put in. Now, just as a matter of clarification, you see a BDU uniform like this, or I'm sorry, but a combat uniform like either one of these, if you see it with the black threading for the name tapes, rank insignia, and stuff like that, that would be Army issued. Air Force would be gold. So, as I said, this would be a Army issue. As you can see, black threading for your name tapes. Now, right here is the complete set of what is today's Army combat uniform. Let me move the bush out of side. This one was made by Proper as well for the hat. Now, this one, you got your nice pocket system here, though I like the pocket system on this jacket a little better, but that's just my personal preference. This one is just the big square with a Velcro access that is, well, zipper access here. Just zip that down, open it up. You could get your hand in here, zip it back up. There you go. My only gripe about this is what the hell do you do when the zipper fails, if it ever does. Now, hopefully the United States government does invest a lot more in their zippers and Velcro as far as quality goes, but I digress. You got the little Velcro tabs here that you just undo, and you got your Velcro, your IR glint tape here, and you also have it on the other side of the uniform, as well as the same kind of zipper pocket. Now, let me roll down the sleeve here and show you what else they did to make this thing different. They forewent the pocket to insert the pads on the jacket. This is still a zip open, but it's also got the Velcro as well. I'm not sure why they kept that. It's got its critics. The button adjustment on the cuff is actually quite interesting. You got the button facing down instead of facing up, so that way it's not visible with the uniform. It's not something that any good sniper would be able to pick up on, if they are even that fucking good. But there is that. You know, got how the Army rolls their sleeves up. I decided not to do it for my stuff because, one, I don't give a damn. Two, I'm a civilian, so there you go. All you guys out there know about it, I'm sorry, but I don't give a fuck. Now, the collar, on the other hand, they did not go with the Mandarin style, though you can put it up. You just don't have the little strap to go around your neck, so that's probably a cost-saving issue. I'm not sure. There are probably other guys that could figure that one out, but open this thing up. Let's bring out the pants. Now, keep in mind, Cry actually did pretty good with their uniforms. True Spec was printing out their tactical response uniforms with multicams, so you had a lot of options from those companies like Proper as well. With the pants, they did away with the internal drawstring, though there's no size adjustment points like there would be on your traditional BDUs. That kind of sucks because, hey, I like something that can be adjustable, especially if I'm having one of those kind of things where I'm either losing too much weight or I'm putting on too much weight. I could still adjust it as needed, but that's just me. Basic pocket setup. They went with the buttons again on the back pockets. They also did it with the actual cargo pockets too. You got two buttons here to keep the thing shut, but you also have an interesting third one right here, so that way you can actually take it in, button it here, or it serves as an emergency replacement. I'm not sure which one is which, but as I said, buttons in the field are a lot easier to replace than a zipper or Velcro, so that would be something good on there. Same with the pants. They also did away with the ability to put a knee pad inside the pants, and these are also got the button closure on here, though I think they actually made the pockets on these pants down here a little bigger. This looks like the size where you could actually fit a couple tourniquets in here, or even a standard Sanag 30 round magazine. Again, you got the drawstrings at the cuffs of the pants, and that is pretty much all she wrote about this uniform. Now, we got one last uniform, so please guys, bear with me on this one. This is the final one. Alright, we're in the final stretch of this. This is going to be looking at the combat uniform as we know it today. This is the stuff that if you've watched shows like SEAL Team 6 on History Channel, you know the kind of uniform design. If you've seen it in the field, you've seen it in war movies recently, yeah, this is the kind of uniform that has become the most popular one. Going over to the shirt, this is made by Hand Wild. Just so you know, I will put a Amazon link to that place, or I'll put it in the written version of this. So as you can see, this is pretty much like a soft cotton shirt. This is like your generic shirt you'd see at an airsoft field. You could use this for airsoft training purposes. Definitely, not sure about actual combat operations, but I digress on that one. Same kind of Velcro pocket closure you see on other combat shirts. Now, I'm going to just say it like this. The combat shirts that we've seen, a lot of the guys that were getting these early, like the guys that first cooked this kind of stuff up, were actually special forces guys. They'd take the Under Armour shirts because of how comfortable that moisture wicking material was. They'd take some BDU jackets, go over to their buddies that were parachute riggers, and have the riggers and their sew shop actually make them, cannibalizing the Under Armour shirts and the BDU jackets. So now companies are making these professionally. This one also has the provisions for elbow pads to be inserted. I've got those in the closet somewhere. 3/4 Mandarin style collar. So this would be good if you're operating with a plate carrier. That's what these kind of shirts were made for operating with heavy body armor, but still retain the breathability of your moisture wicking shirts and still have the camouflage you need. That was kind of where it was going. Same kind of situation on the back, but I digress. The pants are going to be the serious one. Now, you've got stuff made by Crack Precision as well as others, and you've got their G3, their G4s. Those are good and all. Each one's got their own evolution changes. I will say for this one, I like what they did. I like the belt loop setup. The front of it is a Velcro closure here with a zipper fly, so definitely an interesting idea. You've got, let me get get this set up here. Okay. This works. Oh, crap. Okay, gotta hold this up then. Okay, now as you can see, you've got your standard pocket insert. You also have over here a bit of webbing that's inside the pocket, and this with as a pull tab to actually adjust the knee pad on the inside. You got basic cargo pocket up here. You've also got it kind of in the back, like right underneath where your cargo pocket, your back pocket is. This one actually has a little pocket in here as well, inner pocket, good enough to put in a 30-round magazine, good enough to put a tourniquet in, and you have it on both sides of the pants, so definitely carry spare mag on both sides. You've got your basic mini cargo pocket here in the cap area. That way you could hold anything from a pack of smokes, tourniquet, E&E kit. You've got the adjustments here on the back to allow you to tighten this thing up around your leg. And you've got the provisions to put in the knee pads, which I do on here, so folding these is a little bit of a hassle. Other than that, these pants are definitely nice. Unlike the Cry ones, these do not have the elastic go around the pad, so if that's a bad thing for you, I get it, but for me, this isn't too bad. And with that, that concludes our look at the Evolution of Battledress. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, don't forget to smash that like button, share this around, subscribe to the channel. If you want to read the written version of this, check out outerheavenpaintball.blogspot.com. Any of the videos that I cut in from Ren0331 and his buddy Bruce, I'm going to link those guys in because, one, I like their content, two, they were an inspiration for how I try to set up some of my video shit. And finally, if you guys need Molly accessories, or you need accessories for your paintball gun, airsoft gun, or your real steel firearms, check out AcidTactical.com. Just remember, when the shit hits the fan and you've got to trust your gear with your life, ask yourself this one question: can your gear survive the acid test? Anyway, links for all mentioned will be in the description to this video, and don't forget, Outer Heaven Paintball and Acid Tactical both have Teespring shops. Check them out. And with that, this is Big Boss, and I'm out of here.